Hey everybody, welcome back to the Pomerium live stream. My name is Nick Taylor. I am a developer advocate over at Pomerium, and today I'm hanging out with John McBride, the maintainer of a new project called Agent API. John, how you doing?
Hey, I'm doing good, Nick. How are you doing?
Good, good, good. For small background for folks, me and John used to work together, so I'm excited to talk about your project today, but I'm also just excited to just hang.
I agree. This is the way that we worked for so long. Not on
Yeah,
a live
yeah,
stream, but at least
literally.
on a call. Yeah, it was great. It was great.
Yeah, totally. Cool, cool. I'm gonna go ahead and just drop a link to the Agent API org, and folks can check that out. I guess let's talk a bit about the project and kind of like how this came about. Like, I know
Yeah.
you have a pretty strong background in Go and like a lot of infrastructure. So, I guess yeah, how did this project come about?
Yeah, that's a good question. It really comes out of kind of an annoyance of, having to use Python for a lot of like AI agentic stuff.
Okay.
At least like in the framework realm of things where, you want to go build something that's gonna plug into a vector store, do RAG, work with a bunch of LLMs and stuff. You're kind of on the top of the funnel doing a bunch of
Yeah.
stuff. You're using LangChain, you're using Llama Index. And I think that there's kind of this. I almost see it as this kind of second wave of AI happening where, recently there's some interesting stuff happening in the Ruby ecosystem of things with some like, new frameworks and things.
Yeah.
MCP is this like new hot sexy thing from Anthropic.
Yeah.
OpenAI
Yeah.
I saw just had a bunch of SDKs they're releasing. So I think my hope is that the days of having to kind of get locked into Python and that ecosystem, or use one of these like rather opinionated frameworks is kind of done. So that was kind of the beginning of it. Was really, I guess, an annoyance
Okay.
somewhat. Uh, and then I started thinking about the problem space from kind of these third-party APIs that these providers, these LLM providers, really the
Yeah.
OpenAIs, Anthropics, Gemini, et cetera, et cetera. They also kind of have a wild incentive to keep you locked into their API ecosystem. And for a little
Yeah.
while, it was basically OpenAI had sort of defined this kind of standard that a lot of people were using, and a lot of things just kind of looked like the OpenAI API. But if you
Okay.
wanted to go in and build something that was sort of more or less provider agnostic, that was kind of an exercise in like implementing a bunch of APIs or like finding ways to kind of flatten the surface of how your client could go work with OpenAI's APIs or
Yeah.
Claude's APIs or Gemini, et cetera. And there's a number of projects that have kind of thought about this as well. Open Router comes to mind, where Open Router just kind of gives you that flat API interface to be able to go do across many different types of models that might be on, again, any of these providers. But yeah, I was thinking about this space, and it really reminded me of some of the things I worked on years ago
Mhm.
in upstream Kubernetes, primarily this project called Cluster API,
Okay.
which Cluster API is kind of a similar idea where you want to be able to provision Kubernetes clusters on any of the cloud providers, AWS,
Yeah.
GCP, Azure, Oracle, even your own Metal infrastructure. And before a project like Cluster API, it was pretty hard to go and do that because you had to plug and play with those provider specific cloud APIs
Mhm.
to be able to then bootstrap. Like I want an AWS look like a Kubernetes cluster. Okay, I need to
Okay.
like go plug into the EC2 APIs and a bunch of the AWS load balancing shenanigans and things and stuff. And um, you know, this was sort of even before like EKS Cuddle was super easy to go bootstrap an EKS cluster and a bunch of this other stuff. Anyways, so
Okay.
that that's a long tangent to say that it reminded me of that and kind of the approaches that Cluster API took to this
Okay.
space, or I guess really a kind of provider API agnostic sort of interface. So the really
Yeah.
big idea is basically that Agent API is sort of is a Go framework, so Go programmers can go and use it to build AI agents, as well as kind of be assured that there's kind of a flat interface and a flat API that,
Mhm.
the libraries will go implement those providers to then be able to use with OpenAI, Anthropic, et cetera, and just be able to
Yeah.
do that plug and play really, really easily, right?
Yeah, totally. And I mean, Go is really good at networking, and there is a lot of Go out
Hmm.
there as well. And like, I mean, I come from a well, application developer background and have done a lot of like Node and TypeScript. And I know there's a lot of TypeScript love happening in AI land right now,
Right.
but it's traditionally been Python. But it's kind of nice to see, and you doing something like this to hopefully cause a kind of like an explosion, a Cambrian explosion of a Go ecosystem of these kinds of things, because
Right.
there are a lot of like all our like, I mean, we're not talking about Pomerium today, but like Pomerium's written in Go,
Yep.
so like it just, and everything I hear about networking, it's always go, 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 so it's
Yeah. And that's one of the things that I wanted to kind of explore in building this SDK as well, is that you know the underlying paradigms in Go are so
mhm.
good for some of this stuff. One of the primary things that gets utilized in the SDK is Go channels, which are really
Yeah,
good at sending back and forth, kind of like a good old fashioned Unix pipe, between different forked processes and things within your program. So
yeah,
that concurrency piece, doing the networking stuff, in the APIs, the
yeah.
channels, all the concurrency and stuff is yeah, a big plus one.
Yeah, I've been watching some of the videos. I'll grab your YouTube channel in a bit, and I'll drop that in the
Sure.
chat. But I was listening to one of your more recent ones, and you were talking about the channels, and I'm curious. Like I've definitely done Go, but I haven't really done anything with channels yet. I understand what they're for, but um, in the case of Go, are channels kind of like the equivalent of like a readable stream in, say, Node.js?
Yeah.
Or are relatively similar, or
Um, Relatively similar. There's a few different ways you can do channels in Go.
okay.
They're really ways for um, concurrent threads to talk to each other or to really like communicate. And there's so many different
Yeah.
ways you can implement different things. Like a channel could be as simple as sending back and forth numbers, between
Okay, yeah, yeah.
between two processes. It could be as complicated as like, lifting and shifting whole structs, and like in memory pieces of copy, for the program that's on the stack and the heap. So
Yeah,
it can get quite insane with the ways you do it, but really underlying all that is it's a really good way for two sort of separate threads to talk to each other. And then really importantly is you can also block on that. So thread A may go spin something up, and then thread B that got spun up is doing a bunch of stuff, but there's a channel that can talk between them, and thread A is probably blocked on reading
yeah.
from the channel until thread B is done doing some stuff. It
Okay,
communicates in
yeah.
the channel. Thread A is now unblocked, and it's kind of gets into like ye old fashioned parallel programming and the ways you think
Yeah,
about
yeah.
that and stuff. So instead of having to share like global state and like have
Yeah.
that locked between a mutex, or a read lock or something, you can instead have a channel that it sort of acts like a semaphore almost, where you're
Okay.
you're just you're just blocking on that to then get some information back and stuff. But you can also do it in a way where it's like a buffered channel, so like thread A doesn't actually have to block on that. It can just keep looping, waiting for
Okay.
something to happen until it eventually reads off of that. But um, yeah, we'll definitely get into that, because that's a piece of how you can build an agent with some of the streaming content.
Yeah, because that's what I saw, like, when you did that video, I saw that's how you were doing the streaming. And
Yep.
also, just wanna say hi to Kyle, Tryon in the
Hey.
chat. I still have this problem on because he's over on LinkedIn watching the stream. I don't know about you, but, like, anytime it seems to be either if I do my own live stream, or it looks like it's even when I'm doing the Premium one, I can't comment. I get an error, always fail to comment. And I've done I've done all the things. I've cleared cookies, relogged in, and
Yeah.
it still doesn't do anything. But if I'm listening to somebody else's live stream, I can reply no problem, and I have no idea what the problem is. But anyway,
Oof.
is hey Kyle. good to have you.
Streaming technologies, they're a pain.
Yeah, no, totally, totally. So yeah, I guess getting to the channels, like, yeah, I guess it depends on what the use case. If you don't care about the order or whenever things are happening, like you were saying, where it buffers and it just goes whenever it goes, that's one thing. But
Right.
in the case of streaming, like for chat, obviously you do want it in the correct order,
Right.
unless but yeah, okay, cool. Yeah, we'll dig into it more, like you said, but. And looking at like I was looking at the org here, I'll drop it in the chat again.
Mhm.
Um, so you have a couple pieces in here. You have like core, which is pretty obvious what it is. It's the core of it. But what's
Right.
and then you just have right now schema validator as well. Is that kind of like a Zod equivalent in Goland or?
Yeah, that's a good question. So GSV is, and this is probably one of the reasons that, Go didn't get a ton of love when this kind of agentic pattern was going back and forth was, mostly because, languages like TypeScript or even Python, you can
Yeah,
do really interesting things with the typing and unions and enum types and a bunch of this stuff that translates really well to JSON schema.
yeah,
That's a little harder to do in Go, just given its
okay,
there's no union types, there's no like type inference or anything.
yeah,
I had to build a bunch of that to make tool calling with schema validation kind of work. So
okay,
that's what GSV is more or less a utility library for kind of a Zod like JSON
okay,
schema validator thing. And that's
okay,
important because if you've built agents before or looked at these AI workflows, is you can
yeah,
kind of get them in this loop where they can actually respond to error messages even when they're trying to call tools in your code to
yeah,
then kind of go back and be like, oh, like, it's name underscore last name or something, not
yeah,
name last or something. I'll go back and try that JSON again, and then the schema validation passes. So in
yeah,
something like
totally,
TypeScript, that's almost trivial, and a lot of the
totally.
stuff we initially built in at OpenSauce with the AI, the OpenAI SDKs, just used
Yeah.
Zod and just like inferred those types, and then was able to automatically do that JSON schema validation from the tool calls. So yeah, that's
Yeah.
GSV is more or less the utility library for that. Core
Okay.
is all of the actual core like API interfaces and
Okay.
libraries that sort of make up the things that you would actually need to use to go and build these things. So you can think like messages are an
Yeah.
important one, which are the actual bits and pieces that go back and forth between LLMs. There's the tools definitions, there's the actual agent definition, and like the kind of continuous loop that gets defined in there.
Okay.
And then from there, there's a bunch of libraries that it's sort of split up in a way that is more or less from my own experience, like not really like having a lot of pain building monolithic
Hmm.
Go SDKs before, where you can get into some like pretty gnarly dependency circles and
Okay.
some like dependency problems where like, oh, this thing is pulling in this thing that has a CVE, but it's not even in the like,
Okay.
whole chain of execution because
Yeah.
you're not using that. So instead, you can kind of pick and choose which pieces that from core that you're getting. So everybody who
Okay.
uses Agent API is going to use core, and then
Yeah.
the rest of those are going to be kind of the pieces that make up the rest of how your agent's going to kind of get fleshed out.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. And to your point about where you're talking about validation libraries, like we are saying Zod and like OpenAI, a lot of the recipes. I remember when we were chatting about this, you were saying pretty much all their recipes have Zod baked into it. Like if you're using the TypeScript ones, at least, obviously. But
Yeah.
and I'm less familiar with Python, but yeah, I listen to the Latent Space podcast quite a bit, and
Hmm.
Pedantic AI seems to be the big one in terms of
Yep.
validation in Python. So they already have a player there as well. So
Yep. Yep.
you know,
And there's a few existing. I mean, like JSON schema ends up just being another thing you can go and implement. No different than like
yeah,
implementing HTTP or some other protocol. So there's other libraries for this. What led me to go and want to like look at building my own in GSV was actually like kind of that utility
hmm,
of like doing some interesting things in a Zod like fashion, being able to
yeah,
say like, it's a number and its minimum should be this and its maximum should be that, and it's like a quick three liner. versus having
Yeah.
to like go build a bunch of structs and like custom like sort of thing. So it takes some nods to Zod in that
Yeah.
way, just from its like utility and ease of use.
Yeah. No, that's cool though, because like I could see like that project just growing on its own. Like obviously you built it as a need to do agent API, but it could have a life of its own too. So that's
Yeah,
pretty cool.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Cool, cool. Yeah, I guess where do you want to go next? So like I guess
Yeah,
like
let's build something. Let's
yeah,
build something
and
with it.
I guess even before we build something, maybe just
Yeah.
get a bit of terminology out of the way.
Oh, I lost you. Or is that me? Hello, is that me?
There. Am I back?
Oh, Nick's back. Nick's back. We're
Yeah,
back.
I don't know what happened. I did absolutely nothing, and I just got a bunch of notifications in Restream. It goes,
Oh
your mic
man,
has been removed. You're this. Anyways,
it's the
that's the
sharks.
beauty of
The sharks are eating the internet cables, man.
yeah. That's the beauty of live streaming, though.
Yep,
But
yep.
yeah, no, I was gonna say like I'm sure probably people tuning in are curious about this project, obviously, but to maybe get some AI terminology out of the way, because like people
Yeah,
talk about like, for example, like agentic flows, and people have heard agents and like just kind of like the TLDR of a few stuff. Like I know you're super familiar with all this stuff, but
yeah,
just
yeah.
kind of like the table stakes kind of stuff.
Yeah, that's a great call out. So, LLMs are probably a good place to start. Those are large language models. A lot of people have heard about ChatGPT and those sort of services you can use. Large language models
Yeah,
powering those, like GPT-4, GPT-4o, DeepSeek. There's a new one of these every week. But those are the actual like underlying neural network technology that is actually doing what's called
yeah,
inference that can actually generate, the next most predicted token in the graph and blah 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 blah
yeah,
blah machine learning, et cetera, et cetera. So that's LLM, large language models.
yeah.
Um, and the way I sort of think about this is all these sort of build on top of each other.
Hmm.
So people started using LLMs in a bunch of these kind of frameworks and libraries like LangChain in Python, just start building more and more pieces of
Yeah.
this. Um, One of those pieces sort of being what people sort of started calling agents. And around the same time was this idea of tool calling. So I think that's the next like really
Hmm.
important thing to think about. Tool calling is a capability that most LLMs these days have to
Yeah.
basically look at a JSON schema and be able to spit out JSON for that schema essentially to like
Yeah.
call one of the tools that is defined in the schema. What that usually ends up looking like is serving a model, in usually an LLM, usually in a big context window, just a bunch of that stuff that is the JSON schema.
Yeah.
I actually have a great blog post. Well, I think it's great. I wrote it, but
Well, it's got to be great. No, but in
I
all seriousness, no, you put out some banger blog posts about all this
banger,
stuff. So
banger after
yeah,
banger. Yeah. Let me see if
yeah,
I could post it. I'll try to put it in the chat here. But it's a yeah, I wrote a blog post about. Oh wow, going in there was great. Okay. So this was, what is an AI agent that I wrote about? And
okay,
it sort of lays out like exactly what's happening at the LLM level, where, an LLM is looking at a JSON schema. That JSON
yeah,
schema really just correlates back to the name of a function, basically in memory, that can get
yeah,
called using those validated arguments
okay,
inside of your code. So what's good about that is this sort of, and I think this is another good definition, this like autonomous decision making that you can
hmm,
kind of start to build up. So, maybe the classic example is just like, a calculator. And that calculator function in code might just take like two integers
yeah,
and an operand enum. And that operand enum could possibly be add, multiply, divide. And
yeah,
then in your function, your calculator function, you can do some very basic arithmetic, which is great because, while most models today are actually very good at sort of, uh, they're actually very good at kind of faking it with a lot of this
Hmm.
maths and stuff. They actually they're just predicting the next best token. It's not actually
Yeah.
doing any types of real calculations under the hood because they're all they're non-deterministic. Like you can't actually um,
Yeah.
precisely recreate that in the neural network graph. So again, we're getting back into the weeds of the machine learning crap. So
Yeah.
um, that's tool calling. We can call some like actual real code from
Yeah.
JSON schema that we, kind of warmed up the model on. And then that people were like, what if we just put that in a loop? Like
Yeah.
we just put that in a big loop and we can give it some like really ambiguous things and some really big tools that it can go and do some stuff on. So
Yeah.
maybe you have this quote unquote agent. Really, all that is just the LLM, the tool calling, and then that loop. And that loop can kind of go round and round and round, calling tools really until the end of time if it wanted.
Yeah.
But oftentimes you'll see in these agentic flow sort of diagrams, there is usually like an exit condition where
Yeah.
it's looping, it's looping, it's looping. It's trying to autonomously make decisions based on, whatever prompts and whatever system message and whatever user
Hmm.
input there is. It's calling tools, it's going, and then eventually it's like, I'm done. I did the thing. I've finished, and it'll
Yeah.
like exit and be done or whatever. So, um, yeah. The classic, I think a classic example here is actually like some of the things that have been built recently into things like ChatGPT, where
Hmm.
you can kind of ask it like, go search the internet for me about this and this thing. Really
Yeah.
under the hood, what it's doing is it's kind of entering a loop where it's using some tool to like search web or something. And we even had this with OpenSauce where we could get our AI stuff to go
Yeah.
search Bing,
Oh yeah, the Bing
which
service. Yeah, I remember that.
yeah,
Yeah.
which shout out to Bing, great
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
And really, so these things, it's in a loop. It's hitting Bing or whatever to go get some
Yeah.
information. It's still in its loop. It's looking at that. It's gonna like summarize it, and then it's like, okay, I'm done. I've like looked up this information. I've searched the web for this user prompt. I'm gonna
Yeah.
like spit it out and summarize to the person, what I did and stuff. And that's a pretty simple, kind of, pretty obvious to see what it's doing. But you can build a lot of tools into these things to do some pretty bonkers stuff.
Yeah.
From there, the workflow is then like, a lot of things get a little esoteric. I don't know if there's like that's kind of where we're at today. Like there's a lot of other
Yeah.
crazy ideas people are coming up with where you have like handoff where agents can hand off to agents can hand off to agents, or even
Yeah.
this like swarm idea where you have like 15 different, quote unquote agents all doing
Hmm.
small pieces of a thing to eventually come back together to like a manager to go do something. A lot of
Yeah.
these have, kind of their own tar pits and pitfalls around them, but the very important thing to remember in that is that whenever somebody says agent, it's just a loop, and that
Yeah.
loop has tools that it can call, and it's just hitting the LLM with schema JSON to go and like do validation and then call tools essentially.
Yeah. No, I'm glad you did the explainer because I think a lot of people get super intimidated, and I mean, it is still complex stuff, but it's not as complex as people might think. Like the
Yeah,
function when we say like tool calling, you're just literally calling code. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
so it's just I don't know. Just wanted to go through some of that terminology, and
right.
I didn't forget about your question, Kyle. I was just letting John go through all that. Um,
Letting me rant.
Kyle's curious about MCP, and I know a little bit about this. This is the model context protocol,
Yeah,
and it's basically a standard. And from what I've understood, people are just rolling out servers so that you can serve like, I guess, domain specific stuff to consume. Is that
right.
kind of how you would interpret it, or?
Yeah, I almost think about it more like HTTP as a
Okay.
protocol was the reason that the web could become the web, or like relay the internet protocol on the IP stack.
Yeah.
MCP is kind of the first in these like line of standardized protocols. I'd imagine there's going to be others. It wouldn't surprise me if like OpenAI tried to design and release their own, and like,
Yeah.
I mean, or they just adopt this protocol because, that's kind of the nice thing about protocols is we can kind of have some good co-opetition to like go out and work on them
Yeah.
together and standardize them in a good way. But I think of it almost more like, you know, SCP is a protocol, HTTP is a
Okay.
protocol, file transfer protocol, all this stuff really enables certain functionality. And what I envision the future with MCP being adopted looking like is
Hmm.
that these services and things can enable agents to, one, discover the capabilities of what these other services can do,
Okay,
and
yeah.
then go and utilize those things from capabilities they've discovered. And those
Okay.
servers can actually then have like pretty sandbox tools and like data serving, I guess, for whatever that might be. So a good example is
Yeah.
like my personal agent on my computer
Hmm.
is really a client, just like my web browser might be a client. It
Okay.
implements MCP client, and then maybe open table up on the interwebs. I want
Yeah.
to book for me a sushi restaurant on Friday or something. My agent has a client. OpenTable has a server for MCP. It can go
Okay.
talk to that, discover the capabilities of like what's up there, and then can actually
Okay.
go and like, like, oh, I see there's a like create booking tool that my agent can use. They can
Okay.
communicate
Okay.
about that. And then it's actually just calling tools and it's that same agentic loop. Like there's nothing
Yeah.
really different here besides the tool existing on the MCP server that's up in
Okay.
OpenTable to go and do a thing. So I
Yeah.
I'm actually cautiously optimistic because I mean there's been kind of a lot of pushback, it seems, in the industry, especially around, you know, models getting trained on information that, like X shut down their API and Reddit shut down a lot of their
Yeah.
API for this reason. So MCP might have a hard time with some of these things where it's like, oh, we're Reddit. We don't want to make an MCP server for agents to come and, scrape a bunch of stuff, because that's really,
Yeah.
I mean, maybe there'll be an MCP server for like posting and like as an agent or something on Reddit, which sounds kind of terrible. But for very practical cases, like create
Yeah.
for me a booking on OpenTable, or go look at my calendar and make sure there's no overlaps on Friday so I can do this,
Yeah.
or set me out of office or whatever. Those are like real kind of use cases where
Yeah.
the antithesis of that today is a lot of these AI labs are creating these kind of like desktop agent things that just
Hmm.
use like headless browsers basically to go do a thing, which is
Okay.
kind is kind of disgusting. Like I'd much rather that OpenTable go build a thing that can actually like go utilize that in the same protocol that's been well defined and that can
Hmm.
discover the capabilities, instead of it using my account on OpenTable to like click around the headless browser to be like, here's the booking
Yeah.
button, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Scraping the web away.
Scraping,
Yeah.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. So yeah, it's very early for MCP. I mean, I think recently they just added auth, which I think will also be huge, like capabilities
Hmm.
for authenticating as something on the server side. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's I think the buzz is real. It's gonna be interesting.
Yeah, no, that's cool. Yeah, Kyle's saying he says it seems kind of like OpenAI's function calling, but I guess this ties into what you were saying, where it's almost like they're little pools of tools,
Yeah,
like specific to a certain domain or topic, and you just kind of, and that's kind of what the ecosystem will become. I could see a
yeah,
directory of MCP servers popping up at some point too, and
exactly. And it really sort of distributes them across, like I like today I could go build that into a small LangChain agent,
mhm.
but I would have to implement the tools on that agent to then be able
Okay,
to
yeah,
utilize OpenAI's APIs or OpenTable's APIs to then go do that. Whereas
yeah,
instead, OpenTable could just like have an MCP server with tools defined and be able to kind of almost publish its capabilities, or at least like serve those capabilities for models like looking to use this thing.
okay,
So then it
yeah,
just becomes a simple practice of like, okay, where is OpenTable's MCP server sitting at?
hmm,
Okay, it's mcp.opentable.com. Cool, I'll just plug that into my agent and it just starts using it automatically. So those tools would
yeah.
exist, just kind of distributed, federated away from the actual agent itself, but it can go and discover those and actually use them.
Okay, yeah. Cool, cool, cool. Awesome. Yeah, okay, no, that's great. That's good primer just to kind of get everybody up to speed if they weren't.
Yeah.
Cool. I guess want to look at some code or build something
Let's do it. Let's
or
build something. Let's build a small agent. We'll start with something small and kind of build up from there and see where we get.
cool. You want to go ahead and share your screen? I know you shared it before, but I don't see the
Yes, I
pop up
am.
again.
I am sharing it. Let me try again.
Yeah, stop share and reshare. Okay, there we go. Show on
Nice.
stream. Okay.
Sweet. There we go.
Okay, let's see if we can get us in there too. There we go. Okay,
Nice.
cool.
Make this a little bigger. Okay, so What's even in here? Nothing. Okay, so first thing you usually want to do in any Go thing is go mod init. We'll just call this example.com.
Yeah.
And what that's gonna spit out for us is just a normal old-fashioned Go module. Um, we probably want a main.go, and then in here, we just call this package main. This is a bunch of boilerplate.
Okay.
Func main and print line. Hello. Okay, cool. So we can also do a go mod tidy, which that's kind of our
Okay.
catch-all for doing a bunch of dependency management and stuff.
Okay.
Ooh, Kyle asks a great question about monetization. I'm guessing you're asking
Yeah.
about MCP. There has been talk about that because
Yeah.
obviously, if these agents are going to be going and using this thing and all that stuff, and
Yeah.
there's been a lot of discussion of how that could fit into kind of the auth model for MCP because when they first published it, they were like, we're not gonna look at auth right now, but that's definitely something
Yeah.
we're gonna need to figure out in the future because you also don't want these things just like willy-nilly, hitting your
Hmm.
server to go and like do a bunch of right like random crap or something.
Yeah, totally.
And then they're like, DDoSing you and your server essentially.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
yeah. So yeah, I don't know if that answers your question, but that's yeah,
Yeah,
that's
I could
basically
totally
stuff.
see monetization being a thing for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um,
Okay,
okay.
cool. So
So yeah, monetization maybe an unsolved problem, but I'd imagine that'll get wrapped into kind of the auth conversation. So all right, we have some stuff in here. We have the main file, we have the go mod, and really no dependencies. So go mod tidy didn't do anything. We can go run this thing, just calling the main function, which is just going to print hello. So
yeah.
that's the boilerplate. We got that down at least.
All right.
So to build like something just very basic and simple, we'll need just a few things, a bit more boilerplate. So we'll need a context. We can grab that from the standard library context, and we'll just do a background context. And for those not Go programmers, a bunch of this is going to kind of be like just setting up some of the stuff to make it so that future capabilities can be like a-okay to go.
Yeah.
What a context is, and I'll briefly describe this, is it's essentially a way again to kind of communicate like between parallel processes or things running in parallel. I guess the context of what they're running in, so that
Yeah.
things that call other or things that fork into other processes or do parallel computing can actually cancel contexts and stuff. So in
Okay.
theory, I could call context done. I could call context cancel. Is cancel a thing? Well, we can call context error to kind of communicate to other things consuming this context that there's a problem.
Okay.
We need this context to basically pass down into the core libraries. We
Gotcha.
need let's see what else we need. I'm gonna copy paste some other boilerplates. We need a slog logger, which is the standard library logger.
Cool.
Oh, and this might actually be this is from 2 weeks ago. Uh, that's okay. We'll get around this. I think I think I'm looking at some old notes actually. But you know what?
Okay.
That's just going live. I don't think it's a slog logger anymore. I think it's something else, but that's okay.
Okay.
We'll hit that when we go. So then what we want to do is we actually want to like bootstrap a quote unquote provider, and
Hmm.
the provider is sort of this like agnostic, this agnostic piece of the whole puzzle, be it OpenAI, Gemini, Anthropic, whatever, and
Yeah.
that is the piece that we can actually plug and play into our agent, so that we have kind of a flat interface in a way to be able to use any of those providers like that we would need. So
Cool.
I'm just going to call this provider, and we're going to use my Google. What did I call it? Google Gen AI, I think. Let me see if I can get it to import for me. Found slog. Oh, this is complaining. It didn't do that right. Come on, Google. Or I guess Vim. All right. So
Okay.
we want our provider. There it is. Okay. So this provider is at github.com/agent API Google Gen AI. And this is
Okay.
basically the Gemini provider that actually ends up wrapping a bunch of stuff in Google's downstream third-party library anyways. So this kind of
Okay.
also ends up being a nice way to do kind of clean dependency injection is another way to think about it, where it's like, oh,
Okay.
I need I need Google's Gemini
Yeah.
Go SDK, but you know, I don't want to like bring that into my main module dependency, and it would require me to write a custom client to use
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
So instead, we can do this provider interface where the provider itself is implementing that, and that's this agent API library. So this will then we can call a new provider,
Okay.
and I forget what this takes. Oh, this takes a provider ops, and provider ops takes a logger and a bunch of other stuff. So
Okay.
um,
And like
so
all the providers are different, but they have the same abstracted interface so that you like can Lego all this together, right?
exactly, yeah, that's exactly it. So it's a it's a pretty it's a that kind of flat interface again, which Google, or I would say Go, really excels at. And I'll show you what that looks like in a second, or I could just show you that now. So if I pop up out of here and go into core, and then go into the provider interface, this is actually what defines like what a provider should look like and how
Okay.
it should actually sort of function, I guess, as far as like what function signatures it has. So we
Hmm.
have to call it has to have this function signature for get capabilities. It has to have use model. It has to have a generate. It has to have a generate stream. So
Okay.
that in essence, like anybody could go implement this provider interface
Hmm.
to then be able to say like, oh, like I implemented a slightly different way that maybe is more performant or something.
Yeah.
It's kind of the beauty of being able to like publish a like pretty standardized sort of flat interface to then
Hmm.
enable the community to do a bunch of different things with and stuff. So, all right,
Cool. Cool.
so we need to give this a logger, and this is going to blow up because I don't think we can use a slog. No, we need to
Okay.
use something else. I'm just gonna go grab some other boilerplate real quick in my examples.
Yeah. No, for sure.
Do not pay attention to the man behind the. Okay, so that will be great. Okay, I'm just gonna copy paste this in here. So this is a normal Zap logger, which
Okay.
uses Uber Zap, which is really a fantastic Go library for logging, etc., and is probably the most performant one these days, which I think is why I ended up switching to this underlying logging
Okay.
infrastructure. And then we also need the interface. So this is boilerplate.
Okay. Gotcha.
But at least that will not complain anymore. Don't
Okay.
complain. Okay, it wanted a pointer, and now it has a pointer. So now it's not, and now it's happy. So
Okay.
now
All right.
it's like, oh, it's declared not used. Well, of course, we need to actually use this provider in an interesting way somehow. So we
Yeah.
can then do let's see, we can actually do, let's just call this an agent, and we can grab core, which again is that agent API core, and that is where we can grab we don't want core, we want agents. Okay, yeah, so this is a package in core.
Okay.
I realized that's going to clash my agent. Okay, agent dot new agent. Perfect. So now if we pop into new agent, we can look at what that takes. And new agent
Hmm.
is basically the way that we can do some sane things with with the provider. We can provide it we can give it some options to max steps, some tools that it's going to use, which we'll look at in a minute, the system
Yeah.
prompt, the actual logger, a bunch of this stuff. There's some sane things that it ends up doing, so we can just do agent dot with. We'll give this with input. You are on a what should we say?
Um,
Pomerium fanboy or something. I don't know. But
yeah.
that essentially is the I was not going to like this variable mismatch
Uh,
value.
two
Oh,
values.
I'm using one of the run funcs. Whoops.
Okay.
I think this is in Bootstrap. There it is. Okay, Bootstrap, and we want with. There it is, with system prompt. Okay, so
Okay.
this is where, and some of the naming of this stuff, I warn all watching this live stream because the APIs on this are kind of ever evolving, clearly, as I've been like hacking on it and really trying to find the best way that, across a bunch of these providers it can kind of hashtag just work. But all right, we'll
Yeah.
say you are a helpful assistant or something, and we can go back to that. But there's our
Yeah.
system message, bootstrap with logger, and then we can pop in the logger in here.
Okay.
And okay, so this is going to complain, I think, because this returns an error as well. I don't know what that error message is that keeps popping up, but that's great. Okay, so gotta do the good old fashioned if error does not equal nil thing in
Yeah.
Go, which is
Yeah.
great. And we're just gonna panic because
Okay.
this will just work. I promise. Okay, so at this point and this is still complaining because it's like you haven't done anything with provider. Well, of
Yeah.
course, we need to bootstrap with a provider.
Okay. So
There it is.
all the with methods are really just kind of like your way of doing the dependency injection.
More or less, yeah. So
Yeah.
this will, sort of, I guess, dependency or option, setting options essentially, I
Oh yeah,
guess,
just options or like
where, yeah,
constructor injection or whatever.
exactly.
Yeah.
So, okay, so now that's happy. Now we
Mhm.
have my agent and providers getting used. So now down here, we can basically provider, or we want to my agent dot, and we're just going to call run. And at this point, we can do the with input. So this is actually where we can provide some run options. It's kind of a similar pattern where, there's some sane defaults provided.
Yeah.
And we don't always want to have to like make, or at least I don't want to have to always write, every single piece of a struct or like make a new struct or something. I could just like pass a function or even be able to, enable other people to write their own option functions that they pass in and stuff. With this,
Yeah.
pulling back the veil, what this ends up looking like is a function that returns a function that implements this type. So
Okay.
this type is basically what is expected when you're like bootstrapping and doing some of this stuff. And this pattern essentially just enables you to do like kind of a variable number of options without having to always provide that struct as you pass it in. So
Okay.
yeah, and that's why this is all variable here. So I could even be like, we don't need the logger. We just use the default logger, and it'll figure it out. And
Okay.
this
Yeah.
this doesn't complain because it can take that or it can't take it. Doesn't have to, which is nice. So
Okay.
with logger, so we want with input, and we could say like why. What is the Pomerium company do? And just give it something to think about.
Okay. Yeah.
uh, why are you complaining? Value of type does not implement context, missing method, deadline. What did I do? Oh,
Is it
I
missing?
remember. I remember. The first this one is slightly different because, and I even said this at the beginning. We have to
Oh,
pass
you
in
need your
context.
context, the
Exactly.
background context there. Okay.
Yep. And then we can pass in the kind of variable number of actual run funcs that we give it. So
Okay.
we
Cool.
can give this context and that thing. This also returns. What does this return? Okay, so this returns another kind of special thing, an agent run aggregator and an error. The aggregator is basically the kind of like whole history of what the agent did, or really just the messages that went back and forth, which end up being
Okay. Yeah.
the whole history. So we can, instead of printing line for that, we can just print line ag, and we want messages, and I think it's just gonna be one message, so we can go to where it's gonna be two messages because the first one is gonna be this message here, which is the quote unquote
Yeah.
user message, the actual input thing. And so I'm just skipping that one to the to the actual message, which is not great, but you can iterate these and
Okay.
get
So
rid of them.
it's
So
literally the whole conversation, the agent and the
yep,
user. Okay.
yep. And that was definitely something I stole from, that's kind of how LangChain works. That's how Llama Index works. Some of these patterns are pretty well established and good, I would say. So stealing
Yeah.
some of those. Wow, that's complaining about all of that. Let's get rid of all that. Okay, we don't need
Yeah.
that thing. We want Zap. We want.
Yeah.
Okay,
Cool.
so oh yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say because I've done some work with the Copilot extensions, and it's the same pattern too there. So it's
Yeah.
like you can get the last message, which is the last question you ask, but you also get the whole context, like the entire convo.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
yeah.
exactly. Okay, so we forgot also to capture this error from agent runs will panic if something during the actual runtime breaks.
Okay.
I should have, yeah, at this point, I should have my API keys are also already preloaded. So it's just by default looks for the Gemini API key.
Okay.
So let's go run main.go. And at this point, we should see it doing some stuff. Okay, it freaked out.
Okay. Sending
Why
message.
it did panic. Invalid memory address or no pointer. What did I do?
That's all good. It's the beauty of live streaming.
I know, right? I'm sure I'm doing something just great. All right, let's live debug this. It's gonna be great.
You omitted the logger before. Like I know you said it would default to one. Is maybe it's
Yeah.
that? I don't know.
That's a good question. Let me go into the agent. I was working on this last night too, so I hope I didn't break anything and need to like go
Uh,
back and revert a bunch of stuff. I haven't been the best about like tracking my changes and stuff. I mean, early project, we all know how this goes, but
oh yeah,
yeah,
no, for sure. And like you said, the APIs are going to change probably. It's not a 1.0 or anything. So
right.
yeah.
Okay, what it puked on was in there in 370. Where did you? It's panicking in such a weird place. Generate
73.
provider. Oh, it does go into the provider and generate.
And then okay,
Uh,
so
so yeah, I mean this is good practice for kind of what's happening under the hood here. So
yeah.
in run, what actually happens is you'll notice that there's this forever loop that happens, and
Mhm.
that's part of the whole like agentic, going round and round and round thing. Um,
Yeah.
what it then will do is it grabs the messages and kind of the whole history of those messages, so we can go into there because that's in the stack. And in
Okay.
send messages, it rebuilds the tools that it needs to send, and that's just a bunch of the JSON schema stuff.
Okay.
It captures what like options it needs to send down, and then it actually uses the provider here in generate. Um,
Okay.
so that is the one I'm gonna pop out. I'm gonna pop way out to Google Gen AI provider. We're gonna go down into the provider, and then that's gonna be in generate on
Okay.
line 73. So yeah, here's generate, and then it freaked out on the logger. Great.
Okay, so yeah, so it's the logger not being
Ah,
passed in or
no, I realized what I did. Okay, so it
okay.
was trying there to use the model, and I forgot to use model on this thing. So you'll
Okay.
notice that, and probably because it's a flat interface where it's and this is probably feedback for myself, is there should just be a default model that it uses, but I haven't gotten that far yet. So
Oh, okay, yeah, yeah. Yeah, that makes
we
sense, yeah.
uh we can just have a quick model, and that
Yeah.
looks like a core or that's going to look like a Google Gen AI dot I forget where this lives, models.
Yeah.
Yeah, Google Gen AI models, and then we want sure Gemini 1 and 5 Flash. And that's actually just a constant because those things really aren't changing. So if I push
Okay.
into that real quick, it's pretty simple, but it implements the core model, which is defined as having string ID and some max tokens. And
Okay.
this will sort of inevitably be where a bunch of like metadata lives and stuff that downstream consumers using the SDK can actually utilize, right?
Okay.
So then we can, I think in provider ops, where is it in here? Bootstrap with model. This is funny. I think I did break a bunch of this last night.
All good, all good.
Where am I calling with model? All right, I'm gonna cheat
Yeah.
again and look at my example.
Yeah.
That is the wrong version of my notes. So model.
I wonder if a
Oh, it's
good
provide. It's
default.
yeah. It's basically this where I just forget where I had called this. So yeah, use
Okay,
model
okay.
on the actual provider. Where are we? There we go. Which, honestly, I think that's another thing I need to do is I switched from this pattern where I was just like dropping in the full struct,
Okay.
and then you could do things like use model where we actually pass in the model.
Okay.
And I was like, I don't know if I like that. And then I started implementing a bunch of this stuff the other night, and I haven't finished basically. So apologies, but now
Oh,
this
no worries.
is like it wants a model, it wants a context. Great. Okay,
Yeah.
so now now it's just gonna work. I promise.
Okay.
Okay, so it got pretty far, and
Yeah.
here's a breakdown. Is this true? Is this real, Nick?
Yeah.
Identity aware
Yeah.
access.
Yeah.
Great.
No, that's right.
Huge
Yeah.
success.
ZTNA. Yeah. Zero Trust Network Access. Yeah. That seems pretty accurate. I didn't read the whole thing, but
Yeah, yeah.
um, yeah.
Well, it did a thing basically. It hit those
Yeah.
APIs. So if we go back up into some of the debug logs that are going on is, it's creating a Google generative AI provider, it's setting the model, it's retrieving the messages from the memory backend, which
Hmm.
is just kind of an arbitrary like small graph of like the various messages going back and forth, sending messages, getting a response, and then actually printing that out. So that ends up being kind of the like sort of arbitrary experience for just
Yeah.
generating some content based on the LLM. And I think what I'll show you next, actually, really quick, is what the streaming side of that actually looks like, because that is kind of
Yeah.
interesting as well. So instead of run in here, if we wanted to actually like stream out that content, we can call run stream. If we push into that, we can see that it returns this stream runner results, which I
Okay.
think is maybe even different from my devlog video. I think before I was just returning the raw channels and
Okay.
stuff, but stream runner results is basically a wrapper around, the aggregate that gets returned, the deltas and the error. And the
Yeah.
deltas being important because those kind of stream in from the providers for that kind of chat GPT experience of like tokens constantly flying through. And
Yeah.
yeah, that works pretty well. So let me get back out of here. So really what this is going to look like is we can just call that results. Um, so instead of checking the error, what we want to do is, and I think for the sake of time, I might just cheat again. I'm just going to go grab some of my example
Yeah. Yeah, no worries.
shenanigans down here. Yeah, because some of this is a little nasty. Yeah, and we can just
Yeah.
do the deltas. That works just fine. Um,
I'm curious why you diverged from the typical like result error pattern of Go for this particular function.
yeah, that's a good question. So partly it's because, um, yeah, partly because we have to return channels for the delta channel. So
Okay.
looking at this, it's hard to, so like I'm trying to think how to say this. So there's a scenario that could happen where there's like deltas coming in. They're just kind of like
Yeah.
boop, 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 like I am an AI bot, whatever. Those text tokens are continuously streaming through.
Yeah.
And this inevitably this is the delta chan, and that's
Yeah.
that's bringing a bunch of that stuff in. And then there's also an error that may be way down the road here, as deltas are
Okay.
continuously coming in. Maybe something like critically fails, or there's a random hang up or something from whatever that the provider needs to actually be able to capture.
Yeah.
We can't just return the error outright. So we could do something like this where
Okay. Yeah.
we have
Because it's
stream.
streaming in the error and you don't know when it's going to happen if it does. Okay.
Exactly. So this error would only be the captured error for when the stream runner results was actually returned, or when both
Okay.
when that tuple was returned, essentially. So that would
Okay.
be like right here, like right at the beginning, and which is
Okay.
basically just when like basically when the func uh returns.
Okay.
Um
Gotcha.
and what's a little mind bending about this is deep in here is this very important piece, which is a common pattern for people who've written Go before C. This is basically how you. I don't actually know if this is exactly what it does under the hood, but this is a fork basically where
Okay.
Go Func is going to actually run all of this. So
Hmm.
all of this is actually where we are grabbing those deltas and the messages and the errors and all that stuff. But from the perspective, let me see if I can just close this. So that gets executed, and I can just
Okay.
collapse all that code because from the perspective of the caller of run stream, that all
Hmm.
just happens in a totally separate thread, and
Oh,
it just
okay.
right away returns those results. But those results are what are being operated against here, the aggregate channel, the delta
Okay.
channel, and the error channel. So it's yeah, it's a bit of a can of worms as soon as you introduce like that kind of streaming functionality,
Okay.
because it sort of it sort of just becomes like, well, how do you handle errors now? Well, it's got to be if there's an error here or there, or like,
Yeah.
way deep in here somewhere, or the provider surfaces an error. We have to capture that in a channel. So it just kind of becomes all encompassing, right? Where
Okay.
I don't know if that makes a ton of sense, but okay, I'm gonna
Oh,
back a bunch of this out because it's
yeah, yeah. No, I get what you're saying. And like you could return and you could do the typical error pattern, but it wouldn't really be valuable in this particular context.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So what that sort of ends up looking like, and um, we're running a bit out of time, but what that could end up looking like actually is this other common pattern you get where you have just a forever for loop and then a switch,
Yeah.
and that switch is actually what can dynamically pull off of certain channels. So you would have, and I think I even do this in the run stream, which is really
Okay.
probably the only way to do it. So if I go back way down into GoFunk, we have this forever for loop. Um, which, oh yeah, is sending. So there's a first for loop, which is sending all the messages, and then
Okay.
another for loop that actually captures those channels coming back in. And you see
Okay.
well, I guess it's not a switch, it's a select, which is basically a switch, but we can
Okay.
select on the message channel actually returning. I can collapse that. We can select on the delta channel returning. We can select on the error channel returning, and
Okay.
that's actually how you kind of handle that for the aggregate channel, the delta channel, and the error channel all at once. But for our purposes, we don't actually need that because we don't right now. We probably don't care about the aggregate. We don't care about the deltas or the
Okay.
error. We just care about the delta. So we could actually see
Okay.
that stream through with go run may not go again.
Cool, cool. I was gonna say
Uh,
too for time, I'm good to go longer if you're free, but if you have a hard stop, it's all good. Don't worry about it.
yeah, I do meetings.
Okay. Okay. All
I
right. All
love it.
good.
I love it. And
Okay.
I've yet to eat lunch too. So if I'm a little
Oh
squirrely,
man.
that's why.
Okay.
Well, let's figure this out real quick because I probably broke something again last night.
Okay.
Kicking is. Here's the other thing. A lot of this stuff is, once you get it right, it's right, but it can be a bit gnarly to go through.
Yeah.
I might just. I think I screwed my demo over, so let me just go back into my examples because it's pretty close actually.
Okay. Cool.
Okay, so I'm just gonna go into this demo, and it's basically the same thing. I just had pre-wrote it last night. So could say
Yeah. Yeah.
something, we could say that same thing like, what does Pomerium do?
Okay.
And go run this one. Oh,
And now
really?
this one will stream in now, right? Oh, sorry. No required module.
That's the idea. What did I
Oh,
break? I feel bad. I
this.
feel bad. I broke so much stuff last night.
Oh, it's all good. It's all good. There's a question from Morgan over on YouTube. You need to secure it with question and answer between front end and back end robots that are talking to each other. Use this code in your language. I don't get the full context of that, aside from it's always just good to validate on the front end and back end and secure things. But I'm not sure if that was a question or comment. Um, yeah.
That is a good question. I don't know.
Yeah. So, but while you're just popping that in there, so
Yeah.
John's already showed us you can run the agent and you get a synchronous response, like just like you ask the question and boom, it pops it out.
Mhm.
Now we're doing the streaming response, and there's three channels. There's the aggregate, which is like the full answer. Then there's the delta, which is like John was saying, the I am giving you an answer, like each letter or word or whatever it considers as a token, and then the error channel if anything goes sideways. So Oh,
Exactly, yeah. Okay, so this, yeah, I should have, I knew I was gonna screw myself yesterday. Like,
it's all good.
I was
It's
like,
all good.
I don't need to. It's great. It's great. Okay, so we could just panic again. Panic on air. Okay, we basically rebuilt a bunch of stuff. I think it's about right. If air does not,
Cool.
okay, go. Let's try go run again. Oh, I
Cool. Cool.
panicked again. Okay, I definitely broke something. Well,
Yeah.
trust me, it just works. Go look at the YouTube video.
Yeah, yeah. No, I will grab the YouTube though, because I know we got about 10 minutes because you got a hard stop.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
what's your handle on YouTube? Is it John Codes too? Or
It's yeah, John Codes. It's basically, I can type it out. It's youtube.com/John Codes, like that. So
oh, okay, yeah, John Codes.
I
Okay, yeah,
think that's
cool.
what it takes me to. Let me look.
Yeah, no, that's right. Yeah, it's not your ZZZ one. Okay, yeah, cool.
Yeah. Only
All right.
only on X is where I couldn't get that
Yeah,
actual John
I'll
Codes, but
I'll drop that in the chat.
that's just the joy of, yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna find the particular video. Um, where is it? I'll find it because I did watch this video. Yeah, how I implemented streaming AI responses in Go. That's the one, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
And then I broke it probably the next day. It's great.
Yeah, but regardless, it's a live stream. Like, don't sweat it. These things happen. I was doing it. I had a live stream before this a couple hours ago, and
Yeah.
got right to the end. And the last part, I just kept getting an error, and I was like, I'd secured it with Pomerium, but there was something I had misconfigured to because
Hmm.
I was basically securing Open Web UI with Olama and stuff so that you could access it from the internet, and it's like
Oh yeah.
completely secure. But there was this pass through method where you pass a claim in to just log in, and I I don't know if it was jet lag. I took a red eye last night from Portland, so
Oh
maybe it's
dang.
just that. Yeah,
Yeah.
but oh, anyways, yeah, I dropped the video, but uh, like I said, don't sweat it. The video, because I watched the video the other, I think you published it like a week and a half ago or a week
Yeah.
ago.
Yeah.
So it definitely does work for people.
It's probably just crap I broke locally, and it's
Yeah,
I'm sure I could revert a bunch of that, but it's probably
yeah,
active work. But yeah, no, I think the whole ethos I hope resonates with people just around like kind of that flat interface using Go, and like actually yeah, I hope people find it useful at least, and can start
yeah.
building some cool AI stuff with it.
Yeah, Morgan in the chat saying he subscribed just in case he likes educational YouTube videos. He was the one commenting before, so
Oh,
I think
cool.
you got a new subscriber who's going to be checking out stuff.
Love that. Thanks,
I,
Martin.
I definitely want to dig into this because I still have my own channel because like Pomerium stuff is more infra and security, and that's stuff I'm newer to. And
Mhm.
so like I think to also kind of retain my web dev chops on my own personal stream, I'm probably going to focus more on web dev. And then
Join us
yeah,
in the
yeah,
back end, Nick.
yeah, exactly. So like on the Premiere, because like on the Premierium live stream, like we have guests like you are on today, but I also stream on my own, and
Nice.
I'm just gonna start doing more Go on there. And I think this is a good project that I can dig into because one, I'm interested in all things AI right now too,
Right.
and the fact that it's in Go will help me level up on Go too, to just kind of get my katas in. So
There you go.
I guess like we're almost at time, but like what are like you've built out like the building blocks for these things. Is there any particular agents you've been working on yourself? Like, because you obviously built this one
Yeah.
out of to scratch an itch, but I'm sure you had a use case for yourself too, probably.
Yeah, that's a good question. There was one that I built. Man, this has kind of become, I think it was this one. I don't, it might also be broken.
Okay.
Ah, it is broken. Okay. I was building a pretty simple web scraper agent, and we can
Okay.
kind of look at, like very let me get hard wrap on. Okay, so yeah, like you can even just see from the prompt, like I was just grabbing this in there, but basically
Okay.
like, okay, scrape this, my website, and that's that same agent, AI agent article I was shared earlier, and I was like, okay, summarize
Yeah.
it. So this all looks very similar where we grab context, we have a logger, we have, the Olama provider in this case, we
Yeah.
have, this stuff and this stuff. And then we have the actual run and where's the tool for this thing? Oh, that's weird. It should have a tool because it can't scrape by itself.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh, but in essence, I might have put this somewhere else actually. I'm losing my mind.
It's all good.
Oh,
But
there it is. Okay, there it is.
okay,
It was one step up. Okay, so and this one actually might just run because I don't think it's using some of the local libraries and stuff. But
okay,
if I collapse some of this down, we get the initialize tool. Yeah, so this is an actual tool implementation where we are actually using the web scraper agent with this fetch web page tool. And what that
okay,
takes is a context and the actual arguments to be used. And
okay,
the agent itself will go and actually fill in these arguments. If I pop into that, all the argument is just a URL, but it's using GSV string schema to
okay.
actually kind of denote like what that is. So if I go a little further down where I have some of the Bootstrap tool stuff. Oh, there's also an extract content tool that it can use,
Okay.
which is similar with the extract tool args, just giving it HTML, which is probably just a big blob of HTML. And this
Hmm.
uses just kind of saying like nothing crazy, where it's just like in the doc, go find the body and then just like spit it out,
Okay.
basically.
Yeah, yeah.
So nothing insane, but more as a demonstration purposes. And it also uses this Go query, which is kind of a
Yeah.
jQuery like thing to actually go and grab that HTML essentially. So that's
Okay.
that's what enables this agent to actually go scrape my website. So this should work. Hashtag. Uh, so go run main. Go run web scraper. No, that's where am I? Man, I'm losing my mind, Nick. Okay, here we go. Yes. Go
Who am
run
I? Where
web.
am I?
What is going on? Oh, you gotta be kidding me. Oh, did I break a bunch of this crap too? Provides
Uh,
packages to add it. Go mod tidy. Just do it. Nope.
it's all good. It's all good.
No, it's
But
not. It's not good, Nick. I must.
it's all broken. Well,
I wonder how fast I can fix this, actually.
yeah, get reset hard head. I don't know.
No, no. That's no, we only fix forward here. It might be no, it's not my go work. Oh my gosh. What is complaining?
I bet you it's something small and silly, and it's just making everything else go boom.
Oh, it always is. It always is, isn't it? All right. I didn't even really look at the error. I just in my hubris started yelling. Yeah. Okay. It's no required module provides package
Agent.
agent to add it. That's a little surprising.
Oh, it's not in your Go mod?
Well, it is. I'm doing something that, anybody again who is probably just like this guy. What a goober. But I'm using what's called Go Workspace, basically, and
Okay.
it's sort of a way to work on multiple modules at once, where you
Okay.
can have like kind of a myriad of these things all interconnected, which is beneficial in this early stage because I don't want to have to be doing like, um, git commit and then like pull it down and stuff. And for those
Oh, so it's kind of like
unaware,
a mono repo like kind of thing.
yeah, it's kind of a way to get away with doing mono repo, working on multiple
Okay.
modules at once. And I wouldn't work this way forever because eventually the velocity would slow down and eventually it would just,
Yeah.
kind of all be stabilized and I wouldn't have to change like 15 things all at the same time. Uh, you know, very, very, very early days for this thing, which is great. But
Yeah, yeah.
for those that don't know, Go's package management is all based on Git. So that kind of becomes kind of an annoying crux around like you'll even notice that it's pulling this package in based actually on a Git SHA, which is
Yeah.
this here at the end. So it's grabbing the core library, but that's basically getting subverted by my
Okay.
workspace, with again more dependency injection. So I'm
Yeah,
trying
yeah.
to work on stuff as quickly as possible, which is probably why it broke. So you go and
Yeah,
change
yeah.
one thing in a workspace, that's dependent on by like 10 other things, and then all those things will break. So the joys of big Go programming. But yeah, I might jump here soon. Yeah, thanks, Nick, for bringing me on and chatting through a bunch of this stuff. I
Yeah, yeah.
I love this because I've already noted like a bunch of things I need to go fix, which
Cool, cool.
which is
Yeah,
awesome.
and I know we're at time pretty much with a minute to go here.
Yeah.
Have you had any? Are you looking for external contributors, or are people? Do you want people opening up issues and stuff right now, or is it too
Oh yeah.
early? Or okay,
I'd say go for it. I mean, you're gonna laugh at this. Let me share a different screen real quick.
okay, cool.
Uh, Let me find it. But Brian was actually looking at this recently, and
Okay,
yeah, he opened an issue with just like some ideas for like some use cases he was thinking about, like a stock market
okay, yeah,
account
yeah.
thing and stuff. So like honestly, if people have ideas, if they, I think at one point he like tried something that just like broke,
Okay,
and
okay, yeah, yeah.
I went and helped him like to fix it. Let me see if I can find it. It wasn't in examples. It might have been in core.
Oh, oh, whoops! I linked the wrong repo. I forgot to put the letter I at the end.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
there we go.
like so Brian tried something. Yeah, he like was trying something and it like wildly broke. And like that
Okay,
in itself, I'm just like, oh, like that's great feedback to, it's so, I mean, I'm the only one working on it, so would be very happy if anybody else had ideas or was interested in helping out on stuff. But
cool,
yeah,
cool.
it's early days if you're interested in contributing. I definitely love that.
Cool, cool. Yeah, I'm definitely gonna pull it down and mess around with stuff. I'm off to conference Monday to actually all things open AI, but once I'm back,
Nice.
gonna spend some time with this. Cool. I know you got to hop, so just want to say it's great catching up, and thanks for showing us the project. And like John said, folks, go open up some issues, go try it out, try and break things, and
Yeah.
we'll see you in the next one, folks. And I know you got to hop, so
Yeah.
I will see you later too, John.
Yeah. Appreciate it,
Later,
Nick.
everybody.
Thanks everybody. Yeah. Talk to you
Yeah,
later.
later.